What is going on, everybody? Today we are going to wire up two different setups for loaded pick guards for a Stratocaster. Now this hopefully will help you to kind of get a layout and a couple of tips for putting together your own. So let's say you have a Strat already and you just order pickups and you want to kind of redo all your wiring in your Strat. Hopefully that gives you an idea. Also, it can introduce you to the loaded setups that we have, so you can actually buy this loaded pick guard. These are actually going out to customers today. You can buy these all done, and all you have to do is just solder on the output jack and it's all done. So we've got one with a coil split here. We've got one without a coil split. A couple of different types of pickups in here. This one's got classic 5s and a Super 8, I think, or maybe a DAF, I can't remember. This one's got center punch and hot 5s with the coil split. So we'll run through a few tips and tricks and stuff and give you an idea. If you like this kind of stuff, hit the subscribe button, or you can support us on Patreon at patreon.com/DylanTalksTone, because we are going to have more of this stuff coming. I think this is kind of on the bench stuff has been really fun lately. So let's jump into it. All right, so what we got is a couple of loaded pick guards, and we're going to do a couple of different scenarios here. This one is going to go ahead and have one of these CTS push-pull pots that we are going to assemble into this thing so that we can have a split humbucker with a center punch. Well, it'll go that way. And two, I guess these are hot 5s, yep. And these ones are classic 5s, and this is going to be a Super 8. So, I guess let's go ahead and get these pick guards prepped, and we'll talk about a couple of, I'll give you a couple of little assembly tips before we actually get to soldering. So when I do these and I put the pot into them, I always double nut them, because I don't like when you put together a pick guard and if you just thread this all the way in, what will happen is it will stick up too much and you will not have, the knob will be way too far off the guitar. So I like to check this and have it be super, super legit. So I'm gonna go ahead and put all three of these pots in here, get the depths right, and then I'm gonna show you another thing. Okay, so we've got the pots in and the switch in the pick guard. A couple things I want to have you take note of. Again, of course there's millions of ways to skin a cat, right? But this is just how I like to do it. A couple things you got to kind of be, mindful of is if you point this bottom pot the wrong way, if it's pointed down or back, it won't actually go in the guitar because of the way the route kind of narrows down right here. So this one has to be facing this way. This one obviously has to be facing down because you're going to put your pickup in up here. And even if it's just a single coil, it still makes it kind of difficult if you don't point it down. So I point that one straight down. See how the plate on the pot, on the switch right here? Oh, and this one I face down just kind of in the middle because it's too tight if it goes this way, and it's also too tight if it goes this way, so I point it straight down. And that just makes it, easy once we start wiring. The switch, I put metal plate side down, and the reason for that is I don't like any wires to be sitting on this plate, because as you can imagine, if the switch was facing the other way, the wires that come from this way would be sitting on here, and if you were to press it into the guitar and have anything touch or cut through or whatever, so I like to have those wires, wires come in this way, not over this metal plate. For those that may ask, this switch is symmetrical. So wiring wise, it doesn't really matter which way the plate is on. Okay, so if you ever get a guitar from somebody and it's on this side or it's on this side, it doesn't matter electrically, because like I said, this is actually two switches. You've got a switch on this side and a switch on this side. When we get to wiring it, I'll show you how we fix that. We make use of both of them, but then this metal piece, it doesn't really matter, but I just do it for convenience. Okay, so that's the one. This is 500K pots for this single hum. This is the one that's going to have the Super 8 in it. We're not going to coil split it. This one is going to be coil split. So it looks exactly the same, except we have the push-pull pot here at the bottom. Now, the reason I put it here is because I don't like to have the knob pop up close to my hand. So when you're playing the guitar, right, if this one pops up, then you knock it too much. So I like to have it down here. I like to have my push-pulls as far away from my playing hand as possible. So that's just kind of my personal preference. Otherwise, everything else is exactly the same as the other pickguard. Let's go ahead and I'll put the pickups in it, in both pickguards, and then we'll talk again. Okay, so I got the pickups in the guitar, or in the pickguard. A couple of notes here. With the humbucker, just know that one of the things I do is, you know, these humbucker springs are really long. Yeah, see how long these are? I like to clip about this much off so I don't have to fight it so much. It'll still have plenty of tension in there, but it's just not necessary, because it's just not. So I clip it off, and then the other thing, once you put the pickups in, you're gonna need to. Now, if you get it from me, this is already gonna be done. You know, if you buy a loaded pickguard from us, but you're gonna need to clip off. So here's what I do: I put the pickup all the way down flush with the pickguard, so that it doesn't have to be any lower ever. And then I take my side cutters and I cut the excess off, because if you don't do that, it will hang up inside the guitar. So just FYI, you'll go to put your pickguard in your guitar, and it'll hang up, because those holes might hit the bottom of the cavity. So there's that. So then I basically just route all my wires kind of down to the switch. One of the things you'll want to do if you're not buying a loaded pickguard, you're doing this yourself, make sure that your wires don't come off the back of the pickup over here. See what I'm saying? You want them to kind of stay on the top of the back of the pickup. So that when you put it in the guitar, everything clears. And that'll be the same for both of them. The difference being, this one has a 4-wire and this one has a 2-wire, and you'll just need to make sure also that when you route this one around, because the outside of it is metal, that it doesn't touch anything that it's not supposed to. So we'll when we get to this, we'll show you that. I'm going to go ahead and get all these wires kind of clipped down to length, and then we'll start soldering this stuff together, and I'm going to show you a couple of tricks there too. One of the questions we get is, how do you wire up this braided wire stuff, right? Because it comes kind of like this. How do you wire up this braided wire stuff and ground it? So typically what I do is I just slide the braid back as far as it'll go and just kind of stuff it in here. And then this will get soldered to the back of the pot, which will ground to this pickup. Then this wire comes over here and gets soldered to the switch where it's supposed to go, like so. And then you don't have to worry about any metal touching anything that it's not supposed to touch. So I tell you what, let's just do that really quick. All right, so now we've got it soldered to the pickup switch. So now let's go ahead and just ground this braid to the back of this pot right here. It doesn't take a whole lot because the solder will actually suck into the braid and kind of spread out into the braid, so that's pretty cool. So that'll stay like that. And I'm not adding a lot here yet because we're actually going to have to ground both of our other pickups to the same spot, so I don't want to make a huge mess. So I just tack it there, and then we'll add some more solder when we put the other two grounds from the other two pickups in. So now I'll go ahead and get those soldered up, and we'll show you what that looks like. Okay, so we've got all three pickups soldered to the switch. We've got them grounded here to the back of the pot. This is still going to get some more. Let's make that look a little prettier. It's got to look nice. It's got to look nice. All right. So that's kind of probably the most important thing. Everything else, I'll give you another trick when we put the cap on here in a second. But basically everything else when it comes to this is literally just make sure you don't overload your switch with solder, because you don't want it to drip down in the switch and then cause the switch to be non-functional. And then everything else is just kind of follow the schematic, right? For a basic setup like this. And then when we do the tone circuit, I'll show you one little trick that I use so that we can make this tone knob adjust this pickup separately. So let me run through some of this stuff, get it all soldered together, and I'll show you a couple of those tricks as well. Okay, we're going to do the tone right now. Let's do this. So the way I like to do this is I actually use the leg of the cap so that it kind of goes over here like this instead of using a wire. I don't know why I like to do that. I just think it's cleaner. So that'll go in there. Just kind of bend this around and then kind of bend it back so it stays kind of like that. And then this guy will get turned around so he gets ground like soldered against the back of the pot like so. And then typically, just so this thing doesn't move, I like to do this one first. Then we'll do this one. And before we forget, we will snip that little dude off the inside there. And we'll come over here. People always ask me about using a heat sink on caps, but orange drops are, the internal temperature of the orange drop is never going to get hot enough with the amount of time that we're soldering right here. Now, if you sat on here for 5 minutes, you might be able to, but you know, we're not talking about that much time. Doing this with a camera above my work is a little bit more cumbersome than normal. All right. Yeah, see, I just bonked the camera with my hat. All right, so we'll go ahead and trim that off. Boom. So now that's done. Now let's talk about making our tone circuit work for both, make this work for this pickup. So we're going to take a wire and we're going to go from here this is pretty self-explanatory with the schematic, and actually I like to do this last. We're doing this out of order. Hang on. All right, we'll just leave that sit there because we're going to talk about that in a minute. Let me actually do this other tone first. Okay, so now we've got this tone hooked up, but now we want to hook up this tone. So the way I do this is typically, let me see if I can get zoomed in here close enough. Typically, you solder this wire to this terminal right here. But what we're going to do is we're going to bridge these two together. That's why I made this a little bit longer. So if we bridge these two together, like this. So solder this one here. Pull the insulation back a little bit. And solder this one here. I like to make sure that this insulation on this wire that goes underneath here is up there so that it doesn't touch what it's not supposed to. Now, because we've bridged those two things together, this tone knob works on the bridge position. So if you have a Strat already that's already exists and you're not wiring it up from scratch, typically this is where this tone knob will hook up. So you can take a little jumper wire and go from here to here, and now all of a sudden this tone knob affects this pickup, this tone knob affects these two pickups. So when we have a single hum, it is especially helpful. Okay, the last thing we're gonna do, we've got our output jack soldered onto here, and when you buy one of these from me, we're gonna give you a pure tone output jack, but you can't solder it on because it's got to go through the little hole on the guitar. So typically what I do when I send these to you is I just put this on here like this, and it's hooked on there, and then that way when you get that, you can solder that on and you'll know where it's supposed to go. Okay, so the last thing we need to do is we need to ground all three pots together. Now you could rely on the foil on the pickguard, but I do not like to do that. So I'm going to give you my little grounding trick to ground all these pots together, because you know we're on a plastic pickguard, we want it grounded, and theoretically you could rely on that foil, but I don't like to, because I like to be better than that. So what I do is I take 3 pads of solder on the backs of the pots like so. Okay, and I don't know if you noticed, but the whole time we've just been using cutoffs of our pickups. We've really had almost enough wire to wire up the whole guitar with just the cutoffs of our pickups. So I've got this little piece of black wire left. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it and I'm going to solder it here. Okay, and then I'm just going to pull it back because you don't want to touch this because it's super hot, right? So then we'll just solder it here. Give ourselves a little more to get some heat through there. Right, and then we'll pull it back. And we've never touched the hot wire because we've got that. We're just using the insulation to insulate our hands from the wire. And solder it here. Now, clip that off, and now you've got your pots are grounded together. And we have a complete wired pickguard. Boom. There you go. And typically what I do is go back through and just double check everything, because especially when I'm making a video, I want to make sure that it's right, because I've been talking while I've been doing it. But there is a complete wired pickguard, and then all you'll have to do is pop your switch cover on, and of course I'll clean it all up. It's got wax and stuff all over it from everything. We got to engrave our name on these 2 pickups, and yeah, there you go. There's a loaded pickguard. Now let me show you a couple of tricks with the single hum with the coil split. All right, so there we have a single hum with a coil split for this pickup, and this tone knob down here uses this pickup, or adjusts this pickup. This tone knob adjusts these 2, and then a master volume for all 3. 5-way switch, pretty slick, all fits in there, everything's all good to go. So hopefully that gives you an idea of what goes into wiring one of these. That way you can wire your own, and then here, or you can buy a, loaded pickguard from us that's already done. It would come literally just like this. These are going out to customers today. So you have this guy here, the output jack. We have our 2 tone knobs. Now this same thing. This doesn't have a coil split, but the same thing is here. This tone knob makes this pickup go. This tone knob makes these 2 pickups go. And then we have all this stuff underneath. Yeah, it's pretty cool. So hopefully this helps, because what will happen is, I believe this is an 11-hole pickguard. These fit in most things. You can also go and you can order custom stuff. We've got a bunch of custom materials if you want to get in touch with me personally, because we have the laser and we can cut custom stuff, so that's pretty neat. We can also do hum single hum. We can do all kinds of stuff. There's a drop-down menu that you can pick, you know, any one of our pickups to go in this, and then we'll wire it up. We don't have a bunch of different wiring combinations. We try to keep that pretty simple because it's easier to troubleshoot on the customer service side of it. So, you know, coil split, that extra tone knob thing, you know, depending on what you want there. So, and of course, like I said, we have a bunch of materials available, and yeah, pretty sweet. So I hope that helps, gives you a little understanding. Thanks for hanging out, and go check out Dylan Talks Tone, where you can get all this stuff, and we'll see you in the next video.